rather than anxiously waiting for the United States to do this and that, why don't we, India and Japan, together incentivize the United States to further invest themselves into Quad framework? Why don't we include Australians as well? Because it is a four-country framework. So let's take a responsibility, India and Japan responsibility to make the Quad train traction not losing steam.
Hello and welcome. You're with StratNews Global, and I'm Ketki Angre, and you're watching The Gist. It was Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Japan in 7 years. Ambitious agreements and optimistic diplomacy. What does it really mean beyond just the big headlines? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi. He was special advisor to late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I would like to start by asking you, India and Japan have so many similarities. We consider each other as stable and reliable partners. In fact, since we talked about Shinzo Abe, when he made that speech, the confluence of two seas in India in 2007, many saw that as a landmark speech that could have really taken the relationship to the next level. Did we not do enough, or were there many missed opportunities? That's something I want to start with.
True. The bilateral relationship between India and Japan has been rather exceptional in both good sense and bad sense. In the bad sense, the strategic concerns and political concerns have preceded economic and business interests. If you look at how Japanese brands have performed in the Indian consumer market, with the exception of a few, such as Maruti Suzuki, you can easily say that they are lagging behind Asian rivals, such as those from South Korea and perhaps increasingly from China as well. So, the trip that Narendra Modi has made of late was very much an instrumental one to boost the commercial ties between the two nations. In the good sense, the fact that India and Japan have first tackled geostrategic concerns uh, indicates that there will be much, much more to be done in the future. And also, the current visit has reassured such a path that we are looking at.
All right, it's interesting because there's a huge investment pipeline, scientific collaboration in lunar exploration, high speed rail momentum, cultural goodwill, labor and technology linkages. And this is really what many would consider laying a robust foundation of what Prime Minister Modi termed as a new and golden chapter in India and Japan relations. How do you see this?
I think it's well said. And for that matter, I have to give tribute to your ambassador stationed in Tokyo, Ambassador Sebi George, who has just terminated his tour of duty in Japan. And from the beginning, he saw that the void is there to be filled by commercial linkages and region to region exchanges. And on those points, he and his staff at the embassy have done a lot. So, Prime Minister Modi came back from Japan largely satisfied with the level that he saw uplifted dramatically since he saw last time.
When the Prime Minister said, make in India, make for the world, how is Japanese industry seeing this really?
I think the Japanese industry still has much, much more homework to do themselves. It's not yet the case that the cream of the crop top leaders of those respective companies have not sent those cream of the crop people to India. It is still New York or London, Frankfurt, not Delhi or other cities in India, and that has to be changed. And those executives sent from the Japanese headquarters must spend quite a few years to catch up with the reality that India presents. So seeing is believing, and for that matter, much more to be done on the part of the Japanese companies.
You had written an opinion piece, I think, in May 2025, talking about how India is looking more west. And, Japan may be losing out on an opportunity here. Things have changed dramatically. There is so much uncertainty in the global trading world today. There's so much uncertainty. Uh, India and US currently probably going through one of our worst phases with 50% tariffs imposed on Indian products into the US. There seems to be no respite for India, at least for now. But in this context, what's the view you now hold, especially with the way India is trying to reshape its own alliances and strategic partnerships?
I, for one, have lost no respect towards the path that India has taken since independence. Very few post-colonial independent countries have experienced such peaceful transitions of power each time they hold great national elections. At the core identity of the Indians is their commitment in basic fundamental freedom values. So, for that matter, we, India and Japan, should not lose sight of that big picture. Short term, there will be disruptions in the bilateral relationship between India and the United States, as has always been the case between Japan and the United States. But the future will not lie in despotic authoritarian regimes, but in open, democratic, accountable regimes. So we should encourage each other. I mean, Tokyo and Delhi should encourage each other to weather this tumultuous period, believing that in a few years' time, tranquility, calmness will be back.
I want to quote something that Prime Minister Ishiba talked about. Japan and India should draw on each other's strength, help solve each other's challenges, and even tackle together the issues that future generations will face. And what you said is actually very much in that context. How do Japanese and Indians come together to get ready and get our future generations ready as well?
What is lacking still is intensive people to people exchanges, student to student exchanges. Japan is very close to China, and Japan suffers from a disease which I call tyranny of proximity, evidence of which can be seen everywhere in the higher education institutions. 70% of doctoral degree seekers are the Chinese. They are diligent, hardworking people, but many of them may be affiliated with the party. So I would love to see more aspiring Indian, high flying, high achieving students in physics, mathematics, and so on finding places in Japanese universities. So, for that matter, the university exchanges remain very much important. And India being such a huge, diverse nation, again, it is up to the Japanese who must study and experience more the diversity of the India as an economy, as a culture, Let's look at the other way around. The future is promising. The sky is the only limit.
When you said student exchange or even skilled worker exchange, there's already a part of this that they've talked about in the enhanced cooperation, and up to 500,000 participants over 5 years, which will definitely be a win win if it actually goes through. Uh, and on the one hand, we have Japan that does face a labor shortage. And on the other hand, India has a youthful demographic bulge, but also Japan has great tech space. Um, Japan's also agreed to help India with semiconductors. There's AI cooperation. There's a lot of talk that has happened and agreements have been made. You see all of this playing that role in the people to people contact as well.
People to people contact is a basic foundation, but much more incentives have to be prepared by both governments to let more and even more Japanese and Indian companies get engaged in high tech development, cutting edge technology development. You mentioned semiconductor, but AI and others as well. So this is still this is still the list of to do list, and that to do list must be substantiated by actions. And I would hope that in the next bilateral summit meeting, this time Japanese Prime Minister is making a visit to India. They should substantiate those talking points.
You mentioned the Japanese Prime Minister would be making a visit to India, but at the same time, there's still no clarity whether President Trump would be coming into India for the Quad meeting. Now, both Japan and India are part of Quad, but there's this very confusing relationship right now between India and the US. If President Trump doesn't end up coming to India, it sends its own signals. So, where does Quad stand now?
It is more difficult to see what Quad is going to be like. The Japanese government has got a sense of ownership over Quad because, after all, it was Prime Minister Abe who initiated the concept and the process. Had Prime Minister Abe been alive, he would have spoken with President Trump a number of times, making sure how important Indo-Pacific region is, how important the Quad as a framework still remains. But rather than anxiously waiting for the United States to do this and that, why don't we, India and Japan, together incentivize the United States to further invest themselves into Quad framework? Why don't we include Australians as well? Because it is a four-country framework. So let's take a responsibility, India and Japan responsibility to make the Quad train traction not losing steam.
When we speak of trade and we speak of bilateral trade, it's roughly in the range of, say, $22 billion, with a lot more scope. And like you also said, that, we've been great partners, very reliable, but maybe we've not really hit the accelerator as much as we should have. Maybe time to get more ambitious with those strategic agreements where both countries do already cooperate, but it's really not moved to the next level. But having said that, there's also, $68 billion private investment in India over a decade. That's the commitment. That's an agreement also that was announced. How do you see this? Because it's not that private investments have not come in; they have come in the past. How does this is this any different from what was committed earlier?
It is still what the Americans would call a ballpark figure, round number. But if the Japanese government proposes such a number, they do homework, speaking with a uh, a number of Japanese companies who have plans to invest into India. So I am pretty much sure that the promised amount of money is going to be really invested into India. Once again, uh, the Japanese, it is the Japanese business community, not the Japanese government, that does investment into India. What the Japanese government can do is to provide those aspiring Japanese companies with cheap government loan and so on. And I think you should be reassured that that's also the path that the Japanese companies and Japanese government together are willing to take.
Okay. I want to change track a little bit to talk a little bit more about the political scenario in Japan right now. You mentioned earlier that if Prime Minister Abe were here, things would have been very different. He could have picked up the phone on President Trump multiple times. Maybe we would not have reached a situation that we face today. There is the recent election, in fact, has given out numbers that are not favorable for the prime minister currently. In that scenario, what's your sense of how much Japan can influence affairs of the world?
It's a very much pertinent question, which is also a very bitter question because, unlike in the past when Prime Minister Abe was in office, the profile of Japan, I have to admit, has been lowered substantially. The voice has been lowered as well. Japan once again has become a boxer who could punch well below his weight. So that has to be changed and that has to be improved. But I'm not so much optimistic short term. Actually, tomorrow, the 2nd of September, the Japanese ruling party is going to have an important meeting in which they will decide whether or not they should call upon an early leadership election leader for the ruling party because there's a growing anxieties and frustrations, even sort of sense of desperation that the current Prime Minister Ishiba, who is in the Japanese system, the chief campaign manager, has failed not once, not twice, but three times in a row in major Japanese elections. So, rank and file members, grassroots members have very much mixed emotions about the current leadership. So, in 1 week, in 1 month, what will have happened? I can't tell you for sure. So, that's where Japan's political uncertainty is like.
And in that same context, if you could tell us a little bit more about Sanseto as a party, it's seen massive gains. It had one seat, it's moved to double digit figures. So obviously, it's coming from a feeling that exists among the Japanese, and Sanseto has probably been able to capitalize on that. So, if you could talk to me a little bit about the rise of the party, given that it probably surprised some people that they could actually win those number of seats.
For your viewers, Sanseito means political engagement party or party for political engagement. Its party platform is yet to be made clear. Its constitutional amendment plan seems to be a collection of many different elements. However, it's succeeded in getting more votes than anticipated simply because those voters who used to be supporting the conservative wing of the LDP have left the party, have lost faith in the ruling party, which indicates that the big tent party or broad church party, namely the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, that's been in power for many, many years, is unraveling, has built a deeper, uh, let's say, dividing line within the party itself. So unless and until some prominent, some very much substantial changes to be introduced in the LDP, one can easily bet that the LDP is going to be uh, even weaker and more unraveling going forward, which again gives a sense of uncertainty and anxiety to the nation's voters and to the external world. I think it's going to be difficult for the moment for Japan to raise its own voice.
All right. Your final thoughts on the Indo Japanese relationship in the context of this current summit? Yes, we've been cautious for far too long. Is it time to put all those agreements and ambitions to work now?
Yes, not only with Japan, India is doing a lot of things. SCO is one, but at the same time, India's getting engaged with the Philippines, and both nations are going to regularly exercise military drills. So I think India is an aspiring nation. It's going to be even bigger politically, militarily, economically. What's important for Japan is to stick to this current trajectory where Japan is determined to buy into the future of India. So that's the foundation, basic foundation that the Japanese politicians should never lose sight from.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Taniguchi, and we really appreciate your joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us here on StratNews Global. Make sure you stay tuned and follow our YouTube channel for more such insightful conversations.